Genesis 3 recounts the fall of humanity through our priestly representatives of Adam and Eve. But what exactly happened which resulted in exile from Eden? Did God place an evil tree in a sacred garden? Isn't knowledge of good and evil a good thing? There are many interesting concepts that need to be looked at more in depth. The common belief among many people today is that in the garden there were two trees, one being the tree of life, which was good, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil, which was a bad tree that was placed there in order to test Adam and Eve. However, this assumption about the second tree results in theological and textual problems. First, the Garden of Eden was considered to be a sacred space that was ordered properly and represented all that was good. So why would God include an evil tree in the midst of all of this? If Eden was the first temple, nothing should have been included that was not ordered for good or that should have caused problems. This would be like including a table with lines of cocaine in your church welcome center. Even if there was a sign that read, "Do not snort," it would seem like an odd addition and represent disorder in a place that was meant to honor God. Second, God never suggests the tree of knowledge of good and evil was an evil tree. In Genesis 3, the woman notes it's in the midst or middle of the garden, meaning it was at the center of the sacred space. You wouldn't put what was evil and displeasing at the center of your temple. Imagine a church putting a statue of Buddha center stage. Such a move would not make sense and would suggest the creators of the church were out of line or corrupt. Because of these issues, it is difficult to suggest the tree of knowledge of good and evil was a bad thing. In fact, it seems the tree was good, along with the tree of life. Knowledge of good and evil is portrayed as a good thing in the Bible. As Kenneth Matthews says, there is no apparent reason why God would have prohibited this. This would imply that perhaps the issue wasn't eating from the tree, but how Adam and Eve went about eating from the tree. Think of how Satan tempted Christ in the wilderness when he offered him all the kingdoms of the world. What Satan offered Christ was not bad. Paul tells us Christ's rulership over all the kingdoms of the earth began after his resurrection. The temptation Satan offered was to bypass the appropriate and necessary processes and seizing them instantly. In other words, the issue was not going about it through God's timing and plan. Sex is not bad or evil. There is even a graphic book in the Bible about how wonderful sex is. But sex with children is abhorrently wrong. In other words, it's not that we think people should never have sex, but that they should wait until they are mature and committed in a marriage covenant. Likewise, the sin in the garden was not eating from the tree, but eating from the tree of knowledge for the wrong reasons and not according to God's timing and plan. Since the text doesn't imply the tree was evil, there is no reason to suggest that God would never have allowed them to gain this knowledge. In fact, the Bible has several examples of God bestowing wisdom upon people according to his plan and time. The issue was Adam and Eve were not ready for this level of knowledge, and they seized it for personal and selfish gains. This makes far more sense than the idea God placed an evil tree in his sacred garden to test them. As we noted in our previous videos, God's call of humanity was about electing creatures to work with him in bringing order to the cosmos. But this would imply a working relationship where God brings humanity to a more insightful and ethical place. Michael Heiser notes God's goal was to bring humanity into the divine council. So the issue in the garden was Adam and Eve chose to seize control and knowledge for themselves, not trust God to bring this knowledge to them at the appropriate time. John Walton says, by disobediently taking the fruit, they were trying to be like God by positing themselves as the center and source of order. In taking from the tree, Adam and Eve were trying to set themselves up as a satellite center of wisdom apart from God. It is a childish sort of response. I can do it myself, or I want to do it my way. These are not a rejection of authority per se, but an insistence on independence. If humans are to work alongside of God in extending order, they need to attain wisdom, but as endowment from God, not by seizing it for autonomous use.